الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت، وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله، عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلاما دائما بدوام ملك الله، وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله، عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلاما دائما بدوام ملك الله، وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله، عدد ما في علم الله، صلاة وسلاما دائما بدوام ملك الله، وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة، في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلق ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. الفاتحة. بين الله تقبل. الفاتحة إلى روح سيدنا حبيبنا وشافعنا مولانا قرة أعيننا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآل الطيبين وأصحاب الأكرمين، ثم إلى روح سيدنا الحبيب عبد الله بن الحدب علوي وأصوله وفروعهم، بأن الله يعلي درجاتهم في الجنة ويكثر مثوباتهم ويضاعف حسناتهم ويحفظنا بجاههم وينفعنا بهم وأسرار وأنوار وعلوم في الدين والدنيا والآخرة. الفاتحة. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته يا شيخ.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Inshallah, we'll begin with the intention of Imam Abdullah bin Ali al-Haddad. And again, this helps us to understand what the text is that we're studying, which the book we're studying is the Ihya ulumuddin. And we're starting with the first book of this, which is the book of knowledge. And we're on the 5th chapter of this, which is adab al-muallim wal-muta'allim, the etiquette or the courtesies or proprieties, the way of behavior of the teacher and of the student. And the teacher and the student, in many cases, is the same thing. When you're studying, the purpose of study is to teach. And when you're teaching, you're reinforcing the learning that you've acquired. And that's why the intention of Imam al-Haddad is so important to all of us, because his intention was when he started his class, he used to make his students repeat after him, Nawaitu, which means I intend, Nawaitu at-ta'allam wa ta'alim, to study and to teach. Ta'allam wa ta'alim, wa tadhakkar wa tadhkir, which is to take a reminder and to give a reminder. Tadhakkar wa tadhkir, and this is connected to your faith, is that in the dhikra tanfa'al mu'mineen, that indeed that there's a reminder, that the reminder, the Quran, will always be beneficial to the believers. So you might be coming and studying the same thing we studied before, but what we want to do from this, we want to get a tadhakkar wa tadhkir, tadhakkar wa nafa'al intifa'. We want to take benefit and we want to give benefit. Nafa' wa intifa' wal fa'ida wal istifada. And the difference, this is also benefit. The difference between naf'a and fa'ida is that some people use the word fa'ida to be something which is specifically beneficial, utilitarian benefit, meaning something which has got practical benefit, whereas naf'a is something which is a much more general benefit. Also, the word fa'ida is used in knowledge to be something which is very precise. So you get in some of the classical books, we say, well, hadi fa'ida, let me give you a fa'ida. And then the fa'ida will be a shortcut of some sort. For example, Imam Abdullah bin al-Haddad, he bases his word al-Latif, the last part on it, is saying Subhanallah 100 times, Subhanallah bihamdi 100 times, Subhanallah azim wa bihamdi 100 times. However, the way that Sayyid Abdullah just read it now, and most of us read it in the modern context, they don't know that was actually how the word al-Latif was compiled and written by Imam al-Haddad. But there's a fa'ida in that if you were to say this particular way, the way that Sayyid Abdullah just read it, Subhanallah bihamdi adad khalqi wa rida nafsi wa zinata arshi wa midada kalimati, is the equivalent of 100 plus. So this is what we call a fa'ida. So we want to get from this dars today and every dars a fa'ida wal istifada. We want to get these benefits and we want to be able to transmit these benefits. Al-fa'ida wal istifada wa hatta la tamassak bi kitabillah, and to encourage myself and others to hold fast to the kitab Allah, وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى, and calling people to guidance, والدلالة على الخير. The difference between dua and dalala Dua means to call. Dalala means to indicate. So dalil is some people use as an evidence, but also people that are particular about using Arabic words for as many things as we possibly can will not use the word satnav. They'll use the word dalil. It's the same thing. The satnav, what it does, it gives you a dalil on how to get from one place to another. So here, dua ila al-huda wa dalil ala al-haq ibtigha wajhillah wa mardati wa qurbi wa thawabi subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we do all of this hoping for Allah's pleasure. So that's the first point about the title of the chapter, is that this is the adab al-mu'allim wal-muta'allim. And we said that Imam al-Haddad, Imam al-Ghazali said that of all of the adab, all of the etiquettes of following the following the correct way when you're studying and teaching, they can be summarized in 10 points or 10 qualities or 10 roles. And the first two we covered. The first one was always to place the knowledge of that of character and of the heart over outward knowledge. And he warned us, and actually I quoted more from Imam al-Haddad, who was more vociferous and more strong in his condemnation of people who, or the way, so not the people, the way of the people that focus on what we call the batiniya. Batiniya is the supposed inward knowledge. And so some people focus on these are the things which we should study, which is the secrets of numbers, the stories of the ancient sages and all of these things which are or the inner meanings of the verses of Quran, where actually that's not what he's referring to here. What Imam al-Ghazali is referring to, what Imam al-Haddad re-emphasizes in his books a few hundred years later, is that what's meant by the knowledge of the heart is the things which affect your character, the things which are manifest in the way you behave, like patience, like steadfastness, like gentleness, like kindness, like care for the young and for the old. All of these qualities are the qualities which are greater than knowledge of the outward. Likewise, what's meant by the knowledge of the inward is how you feel in your prayer, the feeling of awe, as opposed to where you put your hands when you're standing. Some people say on your navel, some on solar plexus, some by your side. These are all actually secondary to the fact of how you feel when you stand in front of your Lord. So this is what he meant by placing the knowledge of the heart over knowledge of the body. Doesn't mean you ignore the knowledge of the body, because you can't pray without following the rules. So you need to know the rules, but the emphasis should always be on the spiritual elements of prayer, of the fast, of the zakat, of all things. This was the first wazifah, and we took 2 weeks to cover that because it's such an important role. The second week, which was last week, I gave you 2 examples of approaches to study and to teaching. And I tried to indicate, or tried to make you think about where you stand on these 2 issues. That's why I started with a question: which would you take as your teacher, Ahmed or Bilal? And Ahmed embodied somebody whose focus was on interaction with people, and he taught, but he traded. While he studied, he got married young, and he studied with his wife present. You know, he had a married life, he had children, so he didn't have he had distractions, so to speak. And we talked about how wife and children, and likewise husbands and children, could also be distractions, and how Bilal was not distracted. He traveled many thousands of miles and didn't get married until after he'd completed his studies. And I tried to indicate that neither of them are contrary to the principle of the second wazifah, that in themselves, because in the case of somebody studying as a married man or as a married woman, if their marriage is not a distraction from their study, it can actually be beneficial. We have the great traveler Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta is known for his travel. However, he's also known that in every travel he made, he got married. So he would travel to Algeria, he married somebody in Algeria. Then he traveled to Egypt and married somebody in Egypt. And some people say, well, why did he do this? Is he just one of these womanizing Arabs? He wasn't. He focused on his life by being married. And not being married would have been a distraction. Whereas to other people, a marriage is a distraction. So the question is not marriage or not marriage, or Tareem or not Tareem, or Pakistan or not Pakistan. The question is which situation is the least distracting for you as a student. And therefore, likewise, the teacher, the teacher is freest. And I'll give an example from my own life. Alhamdulillah, I've never worked as a sheikh. I've never worked as an imam. I've never ever had to take money for teaching the Islamic studies. The reason why is because I had a job. People criticize me. Why do you waste your time looking after other people's kids in schools? Sometimes working with the most difficult children, getting into fights with kids or being hit by kids, when you could be sitting in a mosque teaching us important stuff. And one of the reasons that I didn't give that up was because actually it gave me freedom. Because I know some of my colleagues and friends who were great teachers were limited in what they could do because they worked in mosques. They couldn't say certain things because it would upset certain people. And that role of being an imam also was very poorly paid. So sometimes I knew imams that worked as taxi drivers. Yeah. So their role of being imam full-time, so to speak, being focused on the deen was actually a distraction. Whereas the worldly matters of my own personal life, I worked on a regular day job, teaching children, looking after schools. So the question isn't about what you do or how you study, but is how much is that a distraction? And that's really important for us now, because often I get questions like, I have 5 kids. I homeschool my kids. My husband goes to work. How am I supposed to study? And that's a really difficult question because she can't study. She can't be freed from the dunya to focus on that. But what she can do is she can focus on a little bit of study and then change her intentions and her focus. So when she's working with the kids and teaching with the kids, that is of benefit to her learning process. So here, she may be getting more than I was getting as a full-time student, for example, or somebody that's traveling to Tareem to cut themselves off from their lives. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to Tareem, but I'm saying that you must make sure that the focus of this point, the wazifah to thaniya, the second principle, is that you can stay as away from distractions. And if you can only stay away from distractions for 15 minutes a day, it's fine. 15 minutes a day is a lot of time if it's quality time. And if you read one page of the right book every day, you will find that there will be openings which will come, which will be vast openings of knowledge. And I know people who have only read 50 minutes a day, but every day for years and years. And they've covered the right books. And as a result, people have looked at them and says, where did you study? What kind of scholar are you? Said, no, I just occasionally went to a class. Every week or two, I went to a class, but every day they studied 15 minutes where it was focused. They chose the right time, where there's least distraction. They chose the right place. Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anh, he was well known for his, he was a fighter, he was a leader, and he carried a sword. But he never took his sword into the mosque. He never took his sword into the place where he was studying. And even as the Khalifa, even as once somebody saw him with the intention of killing him, the person came to kill Umar, to assassinate him. And they says, where is the Khalifa? And they saw the Khalifa, they saw Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab lying under a tree with his sword away from his body because he wanted to lie comfortably. And he said, I can't kill this man. this man is a man of justice, because nobody lies like that without, if he didn't feared nobody but Allah. And so Umar ibn Khattab, when he studied, he left his sword outside. When he did ibadah, he left his sword outside. What's this a symbol of? Is what is your sword? What is your distraction? Most of it's mobile phone. Marhaba. Most of it's the mobile phone. Huh? How many people come into a class with a mobile phone? And I remember teaching, it wasn't an Islamic class, it was a leadership program. And somebody took his phone out, put it on the table, and he looked at me as if I was going to tell him off. I said, it's okay, because I know you won't take a call in my class unless it's something absolutely necessary. So you're allowed, in this case, I said, I don't mind you having your phone out. Most Islamic classes, I would say no. If I'm teaching hadith, because most people, like if Fahim needs his phone, I know he uses his phone for taking notes, but his wife is upstairs, his kids are here, his mum's across the road. He doesn't need his phone for the next 45 minutes. So in this case, that wouldn't be and this is the biggest distraction that we have. And other people have other distractions. So the thing, and the second point was distraction or focus. Now the third wazifah, the third role, I'm going to use an example, which is from it's from the Quran, a story from the Quran. Which is the story of Sayyidina Musa. And I'll tell the story first. We'll go over the story first and just make some touch on it, on what some of the key words are. And then we're going to go to the text and look at what the third wazifah was. So, right, to recap, tell Khurram what the first role was. You can remind us all. The first wazifah, the first role of the teacher and the student.
To bring forward the leading thing behind.
تقديم علم القلب على علم الجسم is to always put preference, تقديم, of the ilm, of the knowledge of the heart over the knowledge of the body. The second one, so to distance yourself from things which are distracting you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the third one we'll come to in a minute after I've had a chance to tell the story. But I'll tell the story directly from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ووجد عبدا من عبادنا آتيناه رحمة من عندنا وعلمناه من لدنا علما. And they found a servant from among our servants to whom we had given mercy from us and had taught him from us a certain knowledge. And you'll notice, for those people that can see the screen, the word us is in capitals. Right, so what's this referring to? Sayyidina Musa had traveled with his ghulam, who, according to hadith, was Sayyidina Yusha, Joshua. So Moses was traveling with his servant, Joshua. And these two are significant because Sayyidina Musa is the one who returns to the Holy Land. And Sayyidina Yusha is the one who conquers Jericho. Now, so these two are historic figures. Both of them are prophets. They're traveling through, according to the Mufassirun, they're traveling through what is now Jordan, up towards the Holy Land, and they come to a point where they part ways. And Sayyidina Musa has this desire to meet somebody who can give him inner knowledge, which is ilm al-ladunni, knowledge which is direct knowledge. So for wajada abdan min ibadin, and they found one of Allah's slaves, atainahu, and he was given rahmah. So he was given mercy. Interestingly, he said he was given mercy. Before he says he was given knowledge. So this is what's special about Sayyidina Khidr, who is the person it's referring to. It doesn't mention him by name, but the scholars all agree that this is Sayyidina Khidr. They disagree who Sayyidina Khidr is, but we agree on what his name was. He was given rahmatan min indina wa allamnahu, and we taught him. So here, the knowledge, the first thing you see is knowledge is a mercy. And that this particular type of knowledge, which is what you put forward, taqdeem, ilm al-qalb, the knowledge of your heart over the knowledge of the body. So this is a knowledge which isn't batiniya, it's some kind of hidden mystical knowledge. It's the knowledge of the realities of things. We gave him knowledge which is direct. Ilm al-ladunni is that which comes by inspiration. This knowledge comes by inspiration. And an example of this knowledge is seeing we're in the company of Sayyid Abdullah al-Haddad, who is hosting us. I'll give a story, the direct story that I know from one of his cousins. One of our teachers, Sayyid Ali bin Ahmed Mashur al-Haddad. I remember I was in a very difficult situation in Jeddah. I desperately needed to travel home to the UK. And I kind of went to him with a hope, can you or your father just make dua for me? I sat there, he could see I was rather sad. So he turned to me, he says, don't worry. Before I said anything, don't worry, your flight is on Thursday. I had no ticket, I had no visa. But he said exactly what was required to bring my heart to peace. This is what we call ilm al-ladunni. He didn't know anything. I didn't even know what my flight was going to be. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired in him something. So ilm al-ladunni is where Allah opens up knowledge to people. And sometimes, it's direct knowledge. And this is the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, ittaqullah wa yu'allimukum Allah. Have taqwa, have righteousness, and Allah will teach you direct. Okay, so this scholar, this person, Sayyidina Khidr, has knowledge, but it's special kind of knowledge, which is ilm al-ladunni. Now, when if Sayyid Ali al-Haddad, who I just said had this inner knowledge, so to always have this, then told me, go and buy fool, beans from this particular shop. It's going to be very nice for you. Okay, so he says to you, eat. Why don't you go to have food? I think you should go and buy food from this particular shop. What would you say? Labayk ya Sayyidi. Of course I'm going to go. Why? Because this is an instruction from a man who has clearly demonstrated to me he's got some knowledge beyond. So this is the first thing, is that knowledge, when you're looking for knowledge, you'll see that there is some knowledge which comes direct from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the person who has been granted that knowledge has what we call ilm al-ladunni. So this is the first part of the story, and we're going to come to how this relates direct to the text later. Is that clear what the verse means? Sorry. The surah is Surah Kahf, which we read every Friday, and this particular verse is verse 65. And so this is the story. All of it's from Surah Kahf. So I'm just going to continue from there. If there's any questions, just stop me. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue with the text. قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا. Moses said to him, may I follow you on the condition that you teach me from what you have been taught of sound judgment. I want you to listen carefully to the word which says follow you. So it ends with a ka, which means you, and the verse is taba'a. قال له موسى هل أتبعك. Okay, listen carefully to that. I'm going to come to a similar word. I want us to spot the difference. So he asked, can I follow you? So now the student is a prophet. Sayyidina Musa has revelation. What does revelation mean? Revelation, in particular, revelation means that which Allah gives to the prophets, this wahi. However, the wahi of Sayyidina Musa has a special quality, because he was the recipient of the Torah. He was the recipient of the book of the law of Allah. Whereas Sayyidina Isa is described as rahmatan minna, that Allah sent him as a mercy from himself. So Musa has the book of law. So the man of the book of law is going to the man, Sayyidina Khidr, who was given what? Mercy. And he was given knowledge, which was ladunni. And this is why it's important to understand the relationship between the two. Some of the scholars have said Moses was a prophet. He could only have been taught by a prophet. Therefore, Sayyidina Khidr is a prophet. And this is one of the opinions. The opinion of what's stated by Al-Baghawi. Al-Baghawi says that the majority of scholars say he was not a prophet. And this is what the position of Ahl Sunnah is that he wasn't a prophet. Those people that say he was a prophet, they're using their aqidah, which was a prophet could not be taught by other than a prophet. Both opinions, it doesn't really matter. As it says, these are two perspectives on it. The perspective I'm looking at here is as a student to the teacher. I'm taking the position of Al-Baghawi, the Sayyidina Khidr was not a prophet, but he was given two things, mercy and knowledge, which was inspired from his taqwa. And that's important because when we choose a teacher, we want to choose a teacher who has these two qualities. And some people say, why didn't you choose so-and-so? He's a greater scholar than yours. So often people say that about my Sheikh Afifuddin al-Jailani. They said, I remember somebody in Baghdad saying, he's your Sheikh. Like, he's not a Sheikh, he's a da'i. He's somebody that calls people to Allah, not a scholar or a Sufi. And I just look at them and think, you have no idea. You have no idea who this man is. He has pure mercy. He smiles and people's hearts melt. That's the quality of this man. And when he gives you knowledge, he doesn't teach very often, but when he does teach, he gives such gems and such that you know that whatever he said in these words have 10 times the depth of what the words actually say. This is what we mean by ilm al-laduni. So the first point is the relationship between the students. You're not able, he said, so Sayyidina Khidr, indeed with me you will never be able to have patience. This is interesting. Is he insulting Sayyidina Musa? Which is what a lot of the commentators say, is that Sayyidina Musa was an angry old man. And they quote different hadith incorrectly to say that what this actually means, listen carefully, you would not be you would not be able to, and the reason why you can't is because you're a prophet, and a prophet is not allowed to see munkar. And what you are about to see outwardly would be things that you dislike in terms of Sharia. And you will not be able, as a prophet, to stay quiet. It's not an insult, it's just actually your knowledge of the Sharia will not allow you to stay quiet when something is ladunni. And I'll give you an example of the difference between Sharia knowledge and ladunni knowledge. Again, I must be missing my good friend Sir Abdullah al-Haddad and also my Sheikh Afifuddin al-Jailani, because now I'm thinking about durian. You know, durian is the smelliest fruit on the planet, but it's also very beautiful. And it's something which I didn't like until one day Sheikh Afifuddin said to me, you should eat this. And I thought, so many scholars, including Sayyid Abdullah, told me you should eat this. And I said to him, will you give me ijazah? And he says, I will give you ijazah, just as my teacher, Al-Habib Ali, Al-Aydrus, gave him ijazah, because I couldn't stand this until I got, and then he gave it to me, and all of a sudden, the taste changed. It was the most beautiful fruit I've ever tasted, and the smell disappeared. What am I saying here is that certain knowledges will affect even your taste buds. The way that Satan, and this is not just from this is my personal experience, but you probably think he's just missing his sheikh and his friends. I'll give you something from the hadith, just to balance this off and bring me back to the ilm laysa ladunni. This is from hadith knowledge. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik, he saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam eating a duba. A duba is courgettes. Okay, so he saw him eating courgettes, and he says, "Kuntu hibbu duba min yawma'idhin." From that day, I loved the taste of courgettes. Why? Because something was transmitted between the two of them. That when he saw the Prophet ﷺ eat this, his taste buds changed, and he loved the taste of this. And there's times where, if there's occasions where it's permitted for you to break a sunnah fast. If somebody offers you food and you don't want to offend them, you're allowed to break it. If it's a sunnah farad fast, of course, you can't. And I remember being in a position where somebody, and I knew he knew I was fasting, he says, "Drink this coffee." First of all, I don't want coffee. I'm fasting and I don't want coffee. And he says, "No, drink this coffee to be good for you." Khalas, drink the coffee. And I broke my fast with coffee. Something was transmitted, which is, first of all, Sharia says it's permitted. It was a sunnah fast. But likewise, this ilm al-ladunni, which is transmitted in the act of teaching, which is beyond the simple level of the outward knowledge that's being transmitted. So I'm not saying there's some kind of hocus pocus witchcraft going on here. But what I'm saying is that there is a level of knowledge, and this is what Sayyidina Khidr is saying to Sayyidina Musa, you're not able to. Another meaning of this is actually that he was, the difficulties that he would see, or the difficulties that he would entail on the journey would be a challenge for him. But the correct understanding is the one I gave first. And how can you have patience for what you do not encompass in knowledge? So if you don't have a khabar, the word khubran is if you don't have a khabar about it, why would you follow it? There is no khabar. There is no hadith to mention, or no sahih hadith mentioning coffee. We have a whole book of hadith which are not sahih, which we love to read about coffee, but no sahih hadith about coffee. As far as I know, there is no sahih hadith about durian. But if you don't have khabar about this, you get to the point of many of the people who say, no, bid'ah, haram. I haven't read a hadith that says that. You can't use the tasbih. No, you can't wear. What kind of shawl is this? Did the Prophet? I don't know. I never heard that hadith. And if you say, I haven't heard that hadith, the way people say it is you're a liar, because I haven't heard the hadith that you know. So here what he's saying is, وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. How would a man like you be able to be steadfast and patient about the knowledge which is ladunni, which he says that he's received? Because you're a man of khabar, a man of outward information. You need a dalil for everything. And this is interesting because people ask me the Ramadan question, the Eid question, all of this. You're a man of knowledge. Tell us what we do. I say, I wait till the mosque says Eid and I pray. And if they say it's Ramadan, I fast. He says, no, but you're a man of knowledge. Says, no, I'm not a man of knowledge. I don't need khabar. It's their responsibility. They're the people of khabar. They're the people of fiqh and knowledge and hadith. And I'm happy not to have that knowledge and just have the knowledge that I'm following. So this is two of the points that he's making. Okay, any questions about that before we move on a tiny bit further?
Sorry, that point about the prophets not being able to, in this specific case, not being able to see something that is contrary to Sharia. So this is like an evidence for like the principle dysfunctional traits of the prophets. So, for example, like then it's impossible for them to contravene Sharia as one of their trait or dysfunctional traits. Is this like a proof for that? Or could this be raised as a proof for that?
Okay, there's an Aqidah question here. Is this a proof for the sifat of the prophets, alayhi salatu wasalam, being that they have to baligh al-risala, to always convey the Sharia, and that they're not allowed to see something which is against the Sharia without correcting it. And that's that is an Aqidah principle, but this isn't one of the evidences. What I just said was drawn from that evidence to explain the verse, but this isn't an evidence for that position. That's maybe another matter which we'll come to. So, قال ستجدوني إن شاء الله صابرا ولا أعصي لك أمري. He says that Moses said, "You will find me, if Allah wills, patient, and I will not disobey you." قال فإن تبعتني. There's a difference. What did I say? تبعني and it تبعتني. What's the difference? تبعتني means you by your choice. This is interesting. It's because what Sayyidina Khidr is saying to Sayyidina Musa, tabi'uka, I will follow you. And then he says, in tabatani, if you do this by your choice, in tabatani, la tas'alni an shay. If you choose to take this path, don't ask me about anything, which is itself Sharia, a contract between the two of them. He, as he says, I will enter into this contract by my choice, and that's the difference with tabatuka, but tabatani, the ta, extra ta. فلا تسألني عن شيء حتى أحدث لك منه ذكره. He said, then if you follow me, do not ask me anything until I make mention of it. So they said, فانطلقا حتى إذا ركب في سفينة خرقها قال أفرقتها لتغرق أهلها لقد جئت شيئا إمرا. So they set out when they embarked on the ship, and Al-Khidr tore it open. Actually, the tafsir says what he did, he made a hole. And of the hole, it was not sufficient to sink the ship. So he didn't sink the ship. But the fact that it might sink might lead them to drowning. And that's how Sayyidina Musa responded. He said, have you torn it open, or have you drilled a hole in it to drown its people? You have certainly done a grave thing. Did I not, Khidr said, did I not say that you wouldn't be able to have patience? Here, sabr about what we'd agreed. And it's not an insult, it's just that your role in Sharia would not allow you to hold back to see something else. Okay. What did Musa reply? It's true. So do not blame me for what I have forgot, and do not cover me with my matter with difficulty. So here he's not denying, but the subtlety here is saying that Musa is now in a contrast between his contract to say I will follow you by his ikhtiyar. He enters into this contract, but at the same time he sees something of the contract which he dislikes. He says, okay, yeah, you're right. I should have stuck to the contract. So this is an internal situation around Sayyidina Musa as the one who is seeking the knowledge, the dunni wa rahma, which is how the story starts. So what happens next? فَانْطَلَقَا. So they set out. حَتَّى إِذَا لَقِيَ غُلَامًا. Until they meet غُلَام, they meet a man. فَقَتَلَهُ. And he kills him. Sayyidina Khidr kills him. فَقَتَلَهُ قَالَ أَقَتَلْتَ نَفْسًا زَكِيَةً بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا نُكْرًا. Have you killed a pure soul? For other than having killed a soul, you have certainly done a deplorable thing. قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكَ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. Did not tell you that you will never be able to hold patience with this knowledge. قَالَ إِنْ سَأَلْتُكَ عَنْ شَيْءٍ بَعْدَهَا فَلَا تُصَاحِبْنِي. If I should ask you about anything after this, Moses says, then do not keep me as your companion. Okay, I accept this, and if I can't do this path anymore, then it's okay. We'll have to part ways. قَدْ بَلَغْتَ مِنْ لَدُنِّي عُذْرًا. You have obtained from me an excuse. This is something else. So he's not saying that his knowledge isn't, but he's now under this challenge, so to speak, about whether he can hold fast to this patiently and allow the ilm to come to him. And he says, if I can't do it, if I see again, then it's perhaps that the two ways have to part. فَانْطَلَقَ حَتَّى إِذَا أَتَى أَهْلَ قَرْيَةٍ. And they set off until they came to the people of a town. استطعما أهلها فأبوا أن يضيفوهما فوجد فيها جدارا يريد أن ينقض فأقامه. They asked its people for food, but they refused to offer them hospitality, and they found there in a wall about to collapse. So they asked for help. People didn't give them anything. Then they saw a wall and they went to the wall and fixed the wall. And then Sayyidina Musa says, according to Sharia, you were entitled to be paid for this. You know, these people should have been paying for you. At least they should give you some food. This is the parting between me and you. It could also be read, this is the difference between me and you. And both of those are correct readings of the verse. And both of them explain the situation. Now they need to part ways. But likewise, now's the point where you can see clearly that some things that Musa, the Sayyidina Khidr has, was ilm al-ladunni. There was an insight, like Sayyidina Ali saying to me, you're going to be traveling on Thursday. And I traveled on Thursday. Like Sayyidina Mawlana Afifuddin said, eat it, you'll enjoy it. And you'll be connected to our teacher, Al-Habib Ali Batubahat. Alhamdulillah. So then he goes on. So then he goes, فأما السفينة فكانت لمساكين يعملون في البحر فأردت أن أعيبها وكان وراءهم ملك يأخذ كل سفينة غصبا. As for the ship, it belonged to poor people working at sea. So I intended to cause a defect in it, as there was after them a king who seized every good ship by force. وأما الغلام فكان أبواه مؤمنين فخشينا أن يرهقهما طغيانا وكفرا. And as for the boy, his parents were believers, and we feared that he would overburden them by transgression and disbelief. فأردنا أن يبدلهما ربهما خيرا منه زكاة وأقرب رحمة. So we intended their Lord should substitute for them one better than him in purity and nearer to mercy. وأما الجدار, as for the wall, فكان لغلامين يتيمين في المدينة. It belonged to two orphan boys in the city. وكان تحته كنز لهما, and there was beneath it a treasure for them. وكان أبوهما صالحا, and their father was somebody who was righteous. So they're orphans, but before their father had died, he had this intention. He was a righteous man. And because of the righteousness of the father, the children were protected. And this is one of the lessons that we learn about parents, is that you need what you invest in your life, you may not see in your life. You may see in generations to come. And likewise, you are a manifestation of all the good that's within you. Perhaps it's going to be as a result of a dua of somebody further along the up your lineage. فأراد ربك أن يبلغها أشدهما ويستخرجا كنزهما رحمة من ربك. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your Lord, intended that they reach maturity and extract their treasure as a mercy from your Lord, and I did it not of my own accord. وما فعلته عن أمري ذلك تأويل ما لم تستطع عليه صبرا. So here this story teaches us a lot about what knowledge is, and also about the relationship between a student and a teacher is not always as simple, and that sometimes there are things that you need to recognize from your teacher, which they may have received from ilm al-ladunni, that knowledge which is direct from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a rahmah. And many teachers have received this. And when you go seeking a teacher, you should seek teachers who their knowledge is not purely from the words of texts, but Allah gives them inspiration. And again, maybe I do miss Sayyid Abdullah. But Sayyid Imam Abdullah bin Ali al-Haddad, one of the beauties of this Imam is that he had such vast wisdom, which was from Ladunni. He was a man that was blind. He was a man that grew up in such a way that he was encompassed by mercy all around him. He was given things that were unique. And among the wisdoms and the uniqueness of him was when he went to a village, nobody prayed. He went to this particular village. He went there deliberately because there's no sign of of the deen. He went there, spent a little time, talked to the people started praying. He stayed a little bit longer. It came to Friday. He says, so what should we establish the Friday prayer? He says, but there's only a few of us. He says, 13 is enough. If there's 13 people, you pray the Jummah. There was 13 people, and they established the Jummah. And for many years, they prayed the Jummah in that village with 13, 14, 15 people. Imam Abdullah bin Ali al-Haddad was a faqih, a great scholar, to the level that people would have said he could have been mujtahid. He's mujtahid. However, if you look at the fiqh that he was teaching, you need 40 people for a valid Jummah. You need 40 people, according to Imam Shafi'i and Ahmad ibn Hanbal. You need 40 people for a Jummah to be valid. So why did this Shafi'i scholar who teaches you need to have 40 people tell the people you should do it with only 13? One is because the Malikis say 13 is enough. But more importantly, he knew something which Allah gave to him, which was beyond the texts. I won't say it's beyond the Sharia, it's beyond the simple reading of the texts. And many of the scholars that you see around you, the real scholars, are people who can see beyond the texts, but you can't see beyond the text unless you know the text. And this is the difference when people go to a sheikh and say, oh, Sheikh so-and-so, he's a big peer, he's a buzuk sahib, he's like a level of spirituality where if he says stand in the snow on one leg, you'll get the fatah. And I know somebody who stood in the snow in Afghanistan on one leg all night long because his peers told him that you can't even pray Fajr until you prove to me that you're a good student. So this German guy stood in the snow on one leg through the whole night, and then he came, and alhamdulillah, whatever happened, happened. Now, this isn't talking about that kind of, Sufism. This is talking about that there are people who have ilm al-ladunni. Allah inspires in them understanding which is beyond the text, but they know the text. Imam al-Haddad knew that Imam al-Shafi'i said 40. Ahmad ibn Hanbal said 40. He also knew that Imam Abu Hanifa said 3. He also knew that Imam al-Tabari says 2. But he said 13 because he knew this was appropriate to this situation. He didn't give them a dars. Oh, by the way, let me explain to you what the different opinions of the 5 or 6 madhabs are. He didn't give it. He said, just pray Jummah. Khalas, enough. Enough. And so you will have teachers that are like that. So, Abdul Aziz, I think you should have a good cup of coffee first thing in the morning. Khalas, labbaik ya sayyidi. Well, but he knows the Sharia, and when he gives advice which I know I will listen to. طيب. So what's that got to do with the third wazifah, the third quality? So first, before that, any questions about the story before I read from the text? Should be looking at that. طيب. Right, what I'm going to do to save time, I'm going to pull up the Arabic on screen, but I'm going to read from the English, if that's okay. Right place. وظيفة الثالثة أن لا يتكبر على العلم، لا يتأمر على المعلم أن يلقى إليه زمام أمره بالكلية في كل تفصيل ويذهب عن نصيحته إذعان المريض الجاهل الطبيب المشفق الحاذق. Okay, so the third responsibility of the student is that he not conduct himself in an arrogant manner toward knowledge, nor dominate the teacher. The reason why we gave that story was because the adab of Sayyidina Musa was that he was steadfast throughout. He didn't impose himself over Sayyidina Khidr except when it was clearly Sharia, and then he had no choice. In our case, we can learn from this. If your teacher tells you to do something haram, then you have a right to question that. However, if he's guiding you, you don't question. For example, one of our teachers here in the UK, a man called Syeikh Abdul Haq Bewley. It's not fair to call him a new Muslim because he's been Muslim longer than any of us in this room. He's been Muslim more than 60 years. Became Muslim as a teenager. He's now in his nearly reaching 80. So he became Muslim in the 60s, alhamdulillah. So somebody sent a message to him to say, Salam from Abdul Aziz. Abdul Aziz speaks very highly of you. This was the message that he received. I didn't send the message. It just happened that and his reply, and it's really struck me, he says, I reached nothing except having good opinion of my teachers. So I reached nothing except by having good opinion of my teachers. It's just interesting. This is a message I just got back a couple of days back. It relates directly to this, is that when you go into your relationship with your teacher, you need to recognize your teacher, and you should love and respect your teacher. And when you have this feeling that, of kibr, I need to correct my teacher, khalas, you're finished. It makes me laugh when somebody comes up to me and says, oh, but where's that hadith from? Oh, but there's another hadith. Okay, are you questioning the hadith? It's different. But actually, the point of what they're saying is you're wrong. I'm just showing you that I'm better than you are. And that's fine. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much. But the reality is, if you do that, you will not accept, you will not receive knowledge. One of the wazifahs is that you go into the relationship with your teacher with full awe, respect, and love. It doesn't say that you should accept absolutely. If somebody goes against the Sharia, I say to them also, what's going on here? What's going on here? And if you see somebody, an example, there was one of our teachers was in Tunisia, and he went to one of the ulama of a place called Sfax, not the ulama, one of the great Sufis of Sfax. And he went there, and they were in awe of the Sheikh. So the Sheikh was teaching the dars, and he fell asleep. This is the middle of the night. All the students are sitting there waiting, and he's fast asleep, snoring away, completely asleep. He gets up and he prays Fajr prayer. They pray behind him, but thinking, he didn't make wudu. And only after do they question, Sheikh, did you have wudu? Of course I have a wudu. He says, but you were asleep. He says, yeah. But while I was asleep, I made wudu with the water of the malakut, from the otherworldly waters. What are the students supposed to do then? Do you repeat your prayer or not? Not only did they repeat their prayer, they all left him. Because what was clear was that he went against the Sharia. So here, he's not saying that you follow it, but you question the Sheikh with adab about contradictions to the Sharia. But when there's something which is not contradicting the Sharia, then your love and respect for that person should never put you in such a position to you're not going to get anything. And the reason why Sheikh Abdul Haq, that statement means so much is because I don't really have anything except that I had respect for my teachers. It also got me into a lot of trouble with my own teacher, Habib Hassan. Well, Habib Hassan is one person that, alhamdulillah, he knows how much I love him, and perhaps he shows some of that love to me. But in such a way, it was one occasion I said, came to him, I was in Singapore, says, Habib, can I have permission to go home? He says, no. Okay, khalas. That's all right. I'm going to live here for the rest of my life. And that's okay. So I just decided that's fine. Somehow I'm going to be living in Singapore or Malaysia or somewhere. And I knew that was. So then he turns to me and says, I think you should go to Australia. I thought, no, that's not the plan. Like, I asked permission to go home to England. And if he says no, then I'm going to spend the rest of my life in Singapore. So either way is fine. Australia was not part of the deal. And I thought, what do I do now? I said, Labbaik ya Sayyid. I went back into Bahrain and I thought, what's going to happen now? And then somebody came knocking on my door. He says, "Oh, by the way, I've just got a message from my brother in Melbourne, and the Imam of the Haram is coming to Melbourne tomorrow, and they asked if you could come and welcome him on behalf of the community there. So we're going to arrange a ticket to Melbourne. Is this all right?" I thought, something's happening in this world about. So I said, "Lebek," I said, I'm thinking, I really don't want to go to Melbourne. And then the next morning, then that night, I was just oh my thinking, I don't want to go to Australia. I've got no money. And then I go to, I have my bags packed, all ready to go to Australia. Then he comes, he says, "I couldn't get a ticket." And then Habib knocks on the door. He smiles at me. He says, "Did you ask for permission to go to UK?" "Okay. If you're so desperate to go, you can go." Khalas. I got back to the UK. But what I know is that the few things that I got from Habib Hassan and all of my teachers was not because I was a good student, but because I was in awe of who these people were. But it doesn't mean I just picked these people were special because of these two qualities, the mercy that they showed and the fact that they could look beyond the text. And the likes of all the people I've mentioned, Hajj Habib Hassan, Habib Umar bin Hafiz, Habib Maulana Afifuddin al-Jailani, all of these had these two conditions that made it easy for me. So do not conduct himself in an arrogant manner towards knowledge, nor dominate the teacher. On the contrary, he should place the reins of every aspect of his affair in his teacher's hands completely, submit to his good counsel in the manner that an illiterate patient would put himself in the hands of a compassionate, well-versed physician. It is incumbent on him to show humility before his teacher and seek God's pleasure and distinction in his service. As Sha'bi related, Zayd ibn Thabit, then he tells the story of Zayd ibn Thabit. So Zayd ibn Thabit comes and he gets on his horse, but Sayyidina Ibn Abbas is the one who lifts the stirrup to make it easy for him. And he looks at him and he doesn't know what to do. Because this is the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he knows that Ibn Abbas is a great scholar and he's doing this with wisdom. So he did this, got onto his horse, and then he took Ibn Abbas's hand and he kissed his hand. And he says, "Why did you do that?" Yeah, Sayyid. He says, "Why did you do that?" He says, "I did that out of respect for the knowledge that you have." He says, "And why did you kiss my hand?" He says, "I did that because of the love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, your cousin." So here the relationship should be built around this love. And if you have that love, then it's easy to just submit. And that's the messenger said, flattery is not among the character traits of the believer except in the case of seeking knowledge. So you shouldn't be telling stories like this about people, except ulama. So if I were to talk about this story to say that the new Forest goalkeeper has got all of these qualities, it's inappropriate. Why? Because you only use this flattery, so to speak, in terms of knowledge. Okay, this is what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is therefore not befitting the student to act arrogantly with the teacher. Among the indications of his arrogance towards the teacher is his disdain for accepting instruction that did not originate from the notable and famous among the scholars. This is pure folly, for knowledge is the means of redemption and salvation in the abode of the hereafter. I'm going to stop there because this goes back exactly to the question that we had of Imam al-Haddad. Imam al-Haddad took this opinion and he didn't say what the opinion was. He said 13. He said 13 without even referring to anything. Now the student will say, but Imam al-Shafi'i said. That student will never get anything. The adab, the wazifah of the student is to recognize that if the teacher is teaching something, that even if it comes from a source that they're not happy with, because if they're not happy with it, why have they chosen the teacher? But if they've chosen the teacher, then they should submit. Okay, this doesn't sound like the orthodox position. This doesn't sound like the Qawl al-Mu'tamid. But I'm sure because the teacher said that, again, the likes of said, we give the example of Sheikh Afifuddin. Sheikh Afifuddin's scholarship is, although despite what this person in Baghdad said about he's just a da'i, I know for a fact the level of his knowledge in terms of Sharia. When he was at university, the teachers in the university saw him and says, we can't teach this boy because we know he studied under the same Sheikh that we did, Sheikh Abdul Karim, and he was more beloved by Abdul Karim than any of us. So I may be teaching a master's degree at the University of Baghdad in Islamic Sharia, but this student, he sat at the feet of this Sheikh, the same Sheikh that I got my knowledge from. So therefore and he descends from Abdul Qadir Jailani. Abdul Qadir Jailani was Hanbali, but he was a mufti in all four madhahib. And we know that because he gave fatwa in three of them that are written. He's got Hanafi fatwa, he has Shafi fatwa, and of course he has Hanbali fatwa, and his Hanbali fatwa are relied upon by all of the Hanbali ulama, including those who are dead against the Qadri tariqah. They say the Qadri tariqah is wrong, except Abdul Qadir Jailani is different. Okay, so this is the level of Abdul Qadir Jailani. So when his descendant, Sheikh Maulana Afifuddin, says, this is what you do, I don't ask him, is that Hanbali or Maliki? Is that Shafi or Hanbali? Just do it. Because I know the quality of the scholar is such that it's fine. And an example of this was once he gave his khutbah in a hut in Sweden. He took out his iPad and he gave his khutbah. And I thought, this man is so cool. I just thought this man is so cool. But on top of that, the depth of his knowledge. I never asked him, on what position, which madhab allows you to use an iPad to give your khutbah from. In which madhab can we pray in a hut in a village where there's no Muslims? Because it's not needed. There are opinions. So what it's teaching us is the adab that you use towards your teacher. First of all, choose the right teacher. And then once you've got that teacher, unless there's a clear contradiction to Sharia, like the person who made salah without wudu, mistake there was they chose a big Sufi as their sheikh who was not known for Sharia. So if you choose a spiritual master, you choose one that is a master of outward knowledge, and then you can take ilm al-laduni. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that outward knowledge as well as the inward knowledge. Inshallah, I'll stop there and ask the brothers perhaps to do a qatida. Do you have your daf? While these brothers sing, inshallah, qatida, we will. You can, if you have any questions, inshallah, you can put it to us.
محمد أشرف العرب والعجم محمد خير من يمشي على قدمه
محمد باسط المعروف جامع محمد صاحب الإحسان والكرم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد لله قاتبة محمد صادق الأقوال والكلم محمد ثابت الميثاق حافظه محمد طيب الأخلاق والشيم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد رويت بالنور جينته محمد لم يزل نورا من الهدى محمد عاقب بالعدل ذو الشرف محمد معدن الإنعام والحكم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد خير خلق الله مضار محمد خير رسل الله كلهم محمد دينه حق ندين به محمد مجملا حقا على العالم مولاي صل وسلم دائما ابدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد ذكره محمد شكره فرض على الأمم محمد زينة الدنيا وبهجتها محمد كاشف الغمة والظلم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد سيد الطبات وناسبه محمد صواه الرحمن بالنعم محمد صفوة النار وخيرته محمد طاهر من سائر التهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد واثق بالسيف مضرب محمد جاره والله لا يضرب محمد قامت الدنيا ببعثته محمد جاء بالآيات والحكم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يوم بات الناس شافعنا محمد نور الحديث نازلنا محمد قائم لله ذو إمام محمد قادم للرسل كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله. Inshallah, if there are any questions, then please.
Shukran Aziz, I think there's a question by one of the listeners about the role of Sayyidina Yusha. Yeah.
Okay, so Sayyidina Yusha in this story, there's not much detail, but there is a hadith which mentions the name Sayyidina Yusha. And so references that are made within the tafsir and history, generally speaking, draw on Jewish sources. And if we draw on those sources, then we know from the Sayyidina Yusha at this point was a very young boy. He then is part of the conquest, so to speak, the Holy Land by Sayyidina, or the return of Sayyidina Musa. And then after Sayyidina Musa passes, Sayyidina Yusha is one of the people who then, because of his closeness to Sayyidina Musa, and as you can see, he's his servant in this story, the young boy, he's serving him through the journey. Because of that closeness, it's almost like the apprentice. He becomes a man of great inspiration. And then the battle of Jericho is where they walk around the city shouting Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and then the walls collapse by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Bani Israel through Sayyidina Yusha then control, and they receive victory. The interesting thing is Sayyidina Imam al-Hussein, so this is the time of where we think of Sayyidina Hussein. Sayyidina Hussein was the person that announced the death of his father, Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu Wajha. And he, as we know, Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu Wajha, died on the 20th or 21st of Ramadan. So he died within the last days of Ramadan. Sayyidina Hussein in Najaf, he comes out and he says, on this day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran. It was on this day that Sayyidina Yusha conquered the Jericho. And it was on this day that a great slave was returned to his Lord, meaning his father, Sayyidina Ali. So it's interesting that the revelation of Quran, the death of Sayyidina Ali, and the conquest of Sayyidina Yusha, all according to this hadith, this narration of Sayyidina Ali, Sayyidina Hussein, all occurred on the same night. And the connection between Sayyidina Yusha, that's Joshua, and Sayyidina Musa, to some people, they see the wisdom between the apprenticeship, so to speak, of the child who stood up on the day when he called his family, and they laughed because this boy was the boy that believed in the Prophet ﷺ, and he turned that this person will be my commander. He is then the commander that conquers. And likewise, the role between Sayyidina Yusha and Sayyidina Musa has this special significance. Interestingly, also, the story of the takbir of Sayyidina Yusha is then repeated when Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab conquers Jerusalem, is that he instructs his army to shout Allahu Akbar as they march around the city of Jerusalem. And this instills fear in the people to the extent that the bishop says, okay, but I will only give the keys to their commander. And it's interesting that the one behind the shouting of Allahu Akbar is the one that the bishop recognizes. And then, of course, then Umar ibn Khattab is called. He says, yeah, of course I'll go and take the keys. So he goes in and he then, in effect, conquers Jerusalem without real bloodshed. But one of the reasons was because the army of Sayyidina Khalid ibn Walid and the others, they marched around the city shouting Allahu Akbar, instilling fear. So some people, that's interesting. So that's what I know of Sayyidina Yusha. And as I said, these are not found in hadith. There's only one hadith which mentions Sayyidina Yusha in this context. It just says that the Ghulam was Sayyidina Yusha. But the other information we know from historic sources, but as I say, from the Jewish tradition. We don't deny them. We don't, unless we have reason to. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah bless Sayyidina Juwaira, Sayyidatin Juwaira, inshallah. So, inshallah, that's the third of the principles that we've covered. And inshallah, we'll try and cover the next one next week. I didn't go into the full detail of the text. We didn't read the whole chapter, but people should read that section. Interestingly, it actually ends with the story of Sayyidina Musa. So hopefully we've covered it. Jazakumullah khairan. We have to hand it back to Sayyid Abdullah to conclude with the takhtim of the majlis, inshallah.
Barakallahu feekum, Shaykh Aziz. Thank you very much again for the lesson. May Allah benefit us from what we've learned today, and not only that, trying to practice what we've learned to the benefits of ourselves and also people around us. Jazakallah khair, and to all the listeners, inshallah. I'll end this majlis with the dua of Khatam al-Majlis. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربنا انفعنا بما علمتنا ربي علمنا الذي ينفعنا ربي فكهنا وفكه أهلنا وقرابات لنا في ديننا مع الأهل الكتر أنثى وذكر ربي وفقنا وفقهم لما ترتضي قولا وفعلا قرما وارزقي كل حلالا دائما وأهلا أتقيا علماء نهضى بالخير ونقفى كل شر ربنا وأصلح لنا كل شؤون وأقر بالرضا منك العيون واقض عنا ربنا كل الديون قبل أن تأتينا رسل المنون واغفر أستر أنت أكرم ستر وصلاة الله تخشى المصطفى من إلى الحق دعانا والوفاء بكتاب فيه الناس للناس شفاء وعلى آل الكرام شرفاء وعلى الصحب مصابه الغرار اللهم اهدنا بالهداك واجعلنا ممن يسارع في رضاك ولا تولينا وليا سواك ولا تجعلنا ممن خالف أمرك وعصاك فحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أصرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فتب علينا توبة تغسل كل حوبة واستر لنا العورات وآمن الروعات واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والأهل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمع آمين ربي اسمع فضلا وجود منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نهضى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نهضى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نهضى بكل سول صلى وسلم ربي عليه هد الحب وآله وصحبه عدادة السحب والحمد للإله في البدن والتناهي سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين في كل لحظة عبد عدد خلق ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.